Hi everyone, Tim Plummer speaking. We had some audio issues with our live stream for our City Joomla user group meeting tonight, so I'm just going to record a short version of the presentation for those that missed out that weren't able to attend. Today we were talking about creating your own Joomla template from scratch. Before we get into that, shameless plug for Joomla Day Australia in Brisbane. It's on 3rd to the 4th of August, so if you haven't bought your tickets yet, there's still time to go and buy your ticket and organise your transport and everything to get up there. We should be having people from all over Australia coming, so it's going to be a really good event. If you're in Australia or anywhere near Australia, come along, and if you're in another country, find an excuse to come to Australia and come along for our event. Okay, that's enough about the Joomla Day. So, talking about templates, a lot of the time people will just go and buy an off-the-shelf template for Joomla and install that on their site. While they're great, there are some disadvantages of getting an off-the-shelf template. Quite often when developers are building a template that they're then selling on to multiple people, they're trying to make it as flexible as possible. So by doing that, they add in a lot of features that most sites just aren't going to use. They often use a framework such as Bootstrap or Foundation or another JavaScript framework, and what these frameworks do, they make it easier for the developer to add in extra stuff, but they also load up a lot of files and code that you're never going to use on those sites. So because they're trying to be so flexible, it makes the template larger and bloated. Also, when you get an off-the-shelf template and you want it to look like their demo site, there's usually two ways you go about that. The first way would be to install the template and all their sample data, and then you'd spend a lot of time turning things off and going in and renaming things and trying to get it how you like it, and but similar to the demo. The other way that you do it is install it from scratch, and then you'd have to go in and create all the modules and configure it and that sort of thing. So it can take quite a lot of time just to get the site up and running as per how the template looks. So yeah, they're just a couple of disadvantages. Another disadvantage is that the design's not unique. Anyone else could just go and get that same template, install it on their site, pick the same colour schemes and that sort of thing, and they can have an almost identical site to you. So that's just a couple of disadvantages with off-the-shelf templates. Now, why would you create your own template? To combat some of those disadvantages of an off-the-shelf template, if you're creating something yourself that's a fully custom design, no one else is going to have the exact same template as you. It's very lightweight. You're only loading up the stuff that you really need. You're not loading up any additional features and functionality. So the template itself is very small and efficient. And that's also good for SEO purposes, for page speed, that sort of thing, because you're only loading up the bare minimum of what you need. You have complete control over everything. Nothing will appear on the page unless you specifically put it there. So you're not going to have these little bits and pieces that you just don't need. You'll only have the things that you do need. And you can have the choice of whatever framework you want to use. If you want to use Bootstrap or Foundation, or you can just use no framework at all and just use pure CSS and JavaScript, that sort of thing. Some disadvantages of building your own custom template. First of all, you need a little bit of design skills to be able to build a template, because it's very easy to build something that looks terrible, and if you've got zero design skills, then maybe an off-the-shelf template is good for you. The other disadvantage is you need a little bit of coding skills to be able to build a template. The base files, you don't need a lot. You can do a lot of copy and pasting, but when it comes to the styling of the site, knowing a bit about CSS is quite important to make your template actually look nice. Now, even if you've got no intention of ever building your own custom template, hopefully you'll still get something out of this presentation, because it's good to understand how a template works. If you ever need to go in and customize an existing template from someone else, maybe add in an extra module position or take things out that you don't need, that sort of thing. It's good to know where to look for the files and what the different things do. So before you start any coding, you want to have a bit of an idea of what your site is going to look like. Here's a basic sort of wireframe for a site. So we've got the logo in the top left hand corner, we've got the menu in the top right hand corner in the header sort of bar, a banner area where we might put an image, an area above the main content where we might put some other details there. The main content goes in the middle, that's where the article is, and then we've got a left hand side panel where we can load up things, a right hand side panel and a footer. Now, not every page is going to have all these module positions active. On some pages you might not have a right and a left area, you might have the main content taking the full width. You may not have a banner on every page, that sort of thing. But things like the header and footer would be remain constant on every page. So basically, from this presentation we can build a simple template that's using these sort of module positions. And this is the sort of end output that we're going to end up with. So we'll have a logo in the top corner, menu in the top right, a banner area, some stuff on the left hand side, stuff on the right hand side, your main content in the middle, and your footer down the bottom. But before we build that, we're going to start with a more simplified version. We're not going to worry about the left and right hand module positions. We're just going to have the rest of the things there, and we're not going to worry about the banner. So we'll still have the header, the main content area, a piece of module position above the main content, and the footer position. So to build a template, there's a bare minimum of 2 files that you need. First of all, there's the template details.xml, and that defines the template. It sets up all the details about it, the name of the template, the version number, who the author is, what licenses it has, that sort of thing. It also defines all the different files used by the template, and it specifies all the module positions, and it has the parameters as well, so any options and settings for that template are all defined within that XML file. Then we have the index.php, which is the main part of your template. This is where all the hard work happens. So you can literally build a template with just those 2 files, but there are some other files that any good template should have. So you should definitely have at least one CSS file to style your template, otherwise it's going to look pretty ugly. Or if you don't have the CSS file, you're going to have a lot of inline CSS code, which is rather messy. It's better to keep that as a separate file, which you can later on minimise if you want to make it load up faster and more efficient. The favicon file, that's the little image in the top of your browser. It's good to have a unique favicon for your site. There's a couple of template preview and the template thumbnail. That's when you look at the template in the back end of the Joomla site, you can see the little preview of what this template's going to be like. For a template that you're just building for yourself, that you're just using the once-off, you probably wouldn't even bother with that. But if you're building a template that then you're distributing to other people, then it's nice to have that little preview in there, so when they're looking at the templates in the back end, they can see what that template's going to look like. Okay, there's an offline.php file. Whenever you go into your global configuration and you set your site as offline, there's a page that displays that has the offline message and usually a username and password login, so administrators can still log into the front end and see the site. That offline PHP file allows you to style that page and define how that's going to look. There's an error.php page, that's for when you've got errors on your site, that's what the page it's going to display. And then there's the component.php. So when you append to a URL ampersand TMPL equals component. What that does is it loads up the main component area, so just the main content. It doesn't load the header and the footer and all the other module positions. It's just the bare minimum of the content. And you may use that in like a modal pop-up window or that sort of thing. So it's important to have that component.php file as well. Pretty much if you're building a custom template for your own site that you're just using once off, you can literally rip off these files from one of the core templates like Bees or Protostar. But if you're building it as a template that you want to distribute to other people, then it's a good idea to customize these and make your own versions of them. But we're not going to go into the details of these files. We're just going to look at the bare minimum files to build a template. So first of all, looking at the template details.xml. It's a basic XML file. At the top, we're just defining that it's an XML file. This line here, extension version equals 3.1, that version is the Joomla version that we're targeting. So if we say 3.1, it'll be Joomla 3.1 and up, it's all the way up to 3.9 point whatever it is at the moment. If you try to install this template on Joomla 2.5 site or a Joomla 1.5 site, it just won't install because it doesn't meet the minimum version requirements there. The next part here, type equals template. That's as opposed to a module or a component or a plugin or the other extension types that Joomla has. You're just telling that this is a template that you're installing. The client equals site. That tells Joomla that it's a front-end template. You can also have back-end templates so you can style the back-end, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're just purely going to talk about front-end templates. Then we've got method equals upgrade. Now that's important when you're installing a new version of the template. If you don't put that method equals upgrade and you install a new version over the top, what that's going to do is going to completely uninstall the previous version and install the new version, and any settings that you've got in the parameters or anything like that is all going to be lost. Whereas if you have this method equals upgrade, when you install a version that's higher than the current version, it will replace the files in there, but it'll keep all those settings, so all the parameters that you've set will remain there and you won't need to go in and set them again. Okay, this next chunk of fields here, these are the standard fields that define the template. You can pretty much copy them from another template and just update it with your own details. So we've got the name of the template. You can call your template whatever you like, and that's the name that will appear in the back end of Joomla when you're looking at the template. You've got your version. It's a good idea to start with version 1.0.0 and then increment the version as you're releasing new versions of it. With Joomla versioning, normally the last digit here, that's incremented when you're just doing a minor fix, maybe a minor bug fix or a typo fix or something like that. The middle version number is usually used for when you're adding a new feature, and then the first version number there, that's used when you're doing a major release. So if you were taking a Joomla 3 template and developing it for Joomla 4, then you may increment that to version 2 point something. Okay, the create date is the date that you created the template, or you can also have the last modified date there, whatever you want to put in for that. You'll see that in the back end of Joomla when you're looking at the template details. You've got the author details. You can put in your name and email address and URL. Now that's important for when people are looking at this site down the track. They may want to see who the template developer is so they can get in touch with them if there's a problem or they want an extra feature developed or anything like that. So put your contact details in there. You can put in a copyright notice as well, and also defining the license type. So most Joomla extensions are GNU GPL, but some people do choose to use other license types like MIT or whatever other licenses they want to use. It's only really important if you're distributing this template to other people. If you're just building a custom template for your own site, it doesn't matter what you put in there. And then we've got the description that just tells you a little bit about the template. Now, if you're building this for a multilingual site, or you're building this as a template that you're going to sell that might be used in non-English speaking sites, it's a good idea, rather than hard coding some of this text, to put in language strings there so that it will update with the text relevant for that language. But in this example, I'm keeping it simple. I'm just hard coding all the English text in there, so I'm completely ignoring language files and just building a basic English only template. Okay, the next section here, the files. This tells you about all the files that the template has. So you can see there we've got the index.php and the template details.xml. They're the two basic files that you need. I'm also including a couple of folders here, a CSS folder and a JavaScript folder. Now, you'd normally see the other template files in here, like the offline.php, the error.php, the favicon, and all those other files included. But for the purpose of simplicity, I've just taken them out to just strip this back to the bare minimum, so as not to confuse people who are just starting out. But any good template would have all those other files listed in there too. This next section here is the module positions that are available for this template. So when you go into the back end of Joomla and you add a module, you can select what module position that appears in. If you don't define your module positions in your template here, then those module positions won't be available in that drop-down list for the adding the module. So it's a good idea to make sure that you list all the modules that are used by your template, all the module positions, list them here. I have seen some templates where the developer's forgotten to add the module position. You can still assign modules to it by typing in the position field in the module, but it's better if you list them all there. As far as naming standards go, you can use whatever naming standards you like. There isn't really any default standards. The core Joomla templates use like position 1, position 2, position 3, that sort of thing, which I don't think is particularly user friendly, because I like to have a module position name that is intuitive, that you can look at it and understand where that module position is. Like something like footer, it's obvious that that's always going to be at the bottom of the page, whereas if it was called position 7, how would I know if that's at the bottom of the page or at the side of the page or whatever? So I've tried to keep some intuitive names, that nav for the menu, content top is a module position that appears on top of the content, the content bottom is a module position that appears underneath the content, and the footer is at the bottom of the page, that sort of thing. Quite often templates have like a logo position, they might have a banner position, they might have some other standard sort of positions. You can decide what you need for your template based on your wireframe and what you're trying to achieve. Okay, the last section here of the XML file is the parameters. So these are the options that you have in your template. You can have a template with absolutely no options at all, but if you're distributing this template to other people, then it's a good idea to put in a few options there and make it easy on them. And also, if you're reusing the same template on another site, if you have a few options in there, such as being able to select the logo file rather than hard coding it in there, it just makes it easier when you're using that template again. Quite often you'll see templates with parameters in there to change colours, to change fonts, all those sort of basic stuff that you want to do when you're customising the site. For the purpose of the example, I've just put in one field there, and it's just a media field, so it allows you to browse and select a logo image. But yeah, you can put whatever parameters you like in there. Okay, that's the XML file. Now we get to the index.php, and this is where all the hard work happens for your template. So at the top here we're just saying it's a PHP file. There's a comment section here where you can say a little bit about your template and the licensing and copyright and all that sort of stuff. But obviously comments are optional. If you're just building this for yourself and you're never going to distribute to anyone else, it doesn't matter if you put comments or not. Okay, this line here defines JUG or die. That basically just tells Joomla that this file has to load up through the Joomla framework rather than directly. If you don't include that file, it can be a security risk. It may expose some variables and disclose information if people access this file directly rather than through the Joomla. But if you put in that define JXEC will die, if someone tries to access this file directly, they're just going to get a blank page and not see anything. So make sure you always put that at the top of all your PHP files in your templates. Okay, the next thing here, we're just loading up the application into a variable, which we'll then use to get the parameters and some settings for this template. The next line here, I'm just getting the site name of the template. So you can see I'm using this app variable and I'm calling get site name. So site name is just a standard field that's there. You don't need to do anything to add that. It's just part of the core functionality. And I'm getting the name of the site. Now the reason why I'm getting the site name is I'm using it later on as the alt tag in the logo, and also if the logo is not selected, I'm just displaying the site name there. The next line here is loading up your CSS files. So if you've got multiple CSS files, you have one line for each file. Basically, you just change this name here, template.css, to whatever the name of your CSS file is. It automatically knows that to look in the CSS folder. You don't have to specify that. Your CSS files can be called whatever you like. Some people will call it style.css, some people call it template.css. Doesn't matter what you call it. It just loads up there. The next section here, we're loading up the parameters. So that parameter that we saw earlier with the logo that we select, we're getting the parameters. So once again, we're calling this app variable, and we're getting all the parameters and loading it up into a variable called params. And then we're looking at the params and we're getting the logo file. So what we're doing, we're checking to see whether the logo file has been selected. If there is a logo file selected, we're creating just an image with that logo file loaded up in there, and the alt tag just using the site name. If the logo is not selected, then we're going to default to just showing the site name rather than showing an image that's not there. So that's the top half of the PHP file. Now if we look at the bottom half of the index, this is where all your module positions and stuff are. So we're saying it's a HTML document type. We're loading up some things here. The language is just looking at the site language configured in your configuration file, and the direction is the direction of the text. So if you're building a template for, say, Hebrew or Arabic or any of those sort of languages that are right to left, then that would be important because you'd have different CSS applying and that sort of thing. But in our case, we're just doing the English only template, so we could just leave that stuff out and just put HTML tag there, but we're just putting it in because that's what most templates have. Next section here is the header section of the HTML file. So this line here, the viewport, that's to do with mobile devices. If you don't put that line of code in when you're looking at the site on an iPhone, it's not going to scale properly and it's going to look weird. So always make sure you whack that viewport line in. Then the next bit here is JDoc include type equals head. We're just loading up the standard Joomla head information. So that will load up all the metadata, the site title, and all that standard Joomla stuff. You don't need to hard code that yourself. You can just JDoc include the head and that puts it all in there. Then we have the body of the site. So you can see here I've got a header, which the section across the top of the page, I'm calling it a header, and within that header I'm loading up the logo. I'm using the site URL as a link to that logo, so when you click on the logo it will take you back to the home page basically. And as you can see, I've also got the menu over here, so I'm wrapping it in header nav class so that I can style it and make the menu right aligned. And you can see here JDoc include type equals module, name equals nav, style equals name. So for every single module position that we're loading up, we have one of these JDoc include lines, and we're basically saying that we're loading up a module position called nav. So all the modules that are assigned to the nav module position are going to load up in this area of the page. Similarly, the information that we're loading up in the footer, you can see down here, we've got a JDoc include type equals module, name equals footer. So any modules assigned to the footer module position will appear in this part of the site. You can also see here I've got a module that's appearing at the top of the content, so above the main content. You'll notice here that we're checking to see how many modules are assigned to that position. So if there's no modules assigned to that position, then we're just going to hide that section and not show it at all. If there's one or more modules assigned to that position for that page, then we're going to show this module position content type. And we're wrapping it in a div so that we can style that, that module position with some CSS. Okay. The next bit here, JDoc include type equals component. That's the main content area of your site. That's where your articles load up and your components load up, that sort of thing. And usually directly above the main component area, we have a message queue. Now the message queue is where you see error messages and warning messages and confirmation messages, that sort of thing. So like if you're submitting a form and you haven't filled out a mandatory field, then the validation error message would appear in that area. Or if you're submitting a form, maybe it'll have a thank you message that appears there. Or if there's an error on your site, sometimes it'll appear in that message queue. So always important to have that message queue. I see a lot of templates that leave that out, so it's worth putting that in there. So yeah, we've got the main content area there. Then we've got another module position that appears underneath the content. So once again, we're checking to see if there's any modules assigned to that position, and if there is, we're going to show it. If not, we're going to just hide that section completely, and we're wrapping it in a div so we can style it. And so if you wanted to add any other modules on the page, you can just basically copy this block of code and just change the name of the module position that you're loading up. You'll also see at the bottom here we've got a module for the debug. So when you set your site to debug mode and it loads up all that extra debug information, that's going to load up at the bottom of the page there. So it's worth including that too. So that's really it for a very basic template. So now we get to the live demo side of things. We've got a basic Joomla site here that's just installed fresh and done absolutely nothing with it. If we look in the back end and go to templates, you can see that, oh okay, we can log in, let's find out. Okay, so if we go into our templates, you see we've got the default bees in protostar template. That's all we've got on the site. Obviously, if you change the default template here and refresh your site, it changes the look and feel to that different template. So what we're going to do now is install our basic template. We're going to go install and just upload version 1.0.0 of the template. And you can see there, installation of the template was successful. This is actually the message queue in the back end, so that's, yeah, in the back. Now, I'll just go back one step. If we look at the template files, so in here we've got the index file, we've got the template.xml file, we've also got a CSS file. I've added in a couple of other files as well. I've added in a slicknav CSS file and a slicknav JS JavaScript file. The reason why I've added those in, they do the mobile styling of the menu, so I'll show you that shortly. But the rest of this template is basically what we showed in the presentation, but I just added a few extra things in here. I've added a few extra parameters to this template. So I've got a background colour for the header, the height for the header, and the background colour of the footer. And that's about it for the XML file. For the index file, you can see that in addition to loading up my template file, I'm also loading up this SlickNav CSS file, and I'm loading up the JavaScript file for the menu. You can see here how I'm loading up the parameters for the background colour, and there's a bit of CSS that gets added in there if that's set. We've got footer background colour, and a tiny little bit of jQuery script here to load up the SlickNav, and that's for the mobile menu, which I'll sort of show you shortly. Module positions are all the same. Yeah, not much else different there. So you can literally take all these files and just zip them up into a zip file, and then when you've got your zip file, you can then install that into Joomla. So that's how you install a template. Just zip up those files, and because when you go into install, it looks for that XML file within that package, and then based on that, it allows it to install the template. So if we look at our templates now, we'll see we've got our new template in there, Joomla Sydney template. We can assign that template to our site, and if we have a look at our site, it changes look and feel, but it looks pretty dodgy, and we're not seeing all the information because our module positions in our custom template don't match the module positions in the core template. If you look at the modules on the site at the moment, you can see they're assigned to position 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, whatever. Our site doesn't have those module positions, so what we can do with the menu, rather than assigning it to position 1, we can assign it to our position, which is called nav. And when we refresh the site now, you can see there's our menu on the top right there. Next thing you want to do is load up your logo. So let's go into the template. We'll go into our template, onto Advanced tab, and you can see here's the logo field that we added in the parameters in the XML file. So we can select the logo for this site. I'm just going to upload an image here. We'll grab this logo, upload it, and insert that in. So we've selected our logo, I'll save that, and there you can see there's the logo loaded up there. If you look at our footer, it's not there at the moment, we've got nothing assigned to our footer, so let's go in and set that. We'll create a custom HTML module called footer. We don't need to show title, and we'll assign it to the footer module position, and in here we'll put in a footer message. So okay, and we want that to appear on all pages, so we'll save that footer module, and now we'll refresh. There's our footer down there. Now, it doesn't look very pretty, it's not styled, but we can sort that out shortly. And maybe we want to assign something above the main content, so we've got that module position that we created, the content above, so that's it. Content top. Maybe we'll put in there, and maybe we'll only show this on the home page, not on every other page. So there's our content above the main content area. We may want to add some more menu items here, so let's go in and add another menu. We'll just create a single article, and we'll create that article article. It's published, so save it, and save that. Now when we refresh our site, you can see there's our other page. So if we go to the About Us, you see it's loading up the About Us information, and we go back to home and we can see the home page. There was a couple of other parameters I added to the template, so let's have a look at those. We've got the header background colour, so we can change that. Let's pick another colour, we'll make it red. It's going to look pretty terrible, but just to sort of get the idea, you can see that it's changed the colour. And we can change the height of the header, maybe we can change it to 120 pixels high. And then we go to the bigger header. So you can add a bit of flexibility in the template by having some of these parameters in there that can control the look and feel of the template. If you delete the settings in here and save it, it defaults back to whatever the default was for this template. So if we look back at our template file in our XML file, you can see here the default value of the background colour is 2V, 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 and the default value of the height is 60. So when someone deletes that and saves it, it just goes back to that default value. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is improve this template. Let's refresh that. So we're going to add in the banner position across the top, and the left-hand module position and the right-hand module position. So to do that, what we've done is actually we'll do XML file first. Okay, so you can see here I've added in all those other standard files that the template should have. I basically just copied these from Predestar template. But if you're building this as a proper template, you'd want to make your own versions of these files. You can see here I've added in 3 additional module positions: banner, content left, content right, and that's the only changes I've made in this XML file. If we look at the index.php, you can see that we've loaded up some more parameters. Loaded up some additional module positions. So I've got the banner module position. So it's just like any of those other module positions. I'm checking to see whether I've got any modules assigned to the banner position. If so, I'm showing the banner module position, and I'm wrapping it in something style. With the left and right content, let's just go back to our wireframe that we had earlier. This left-hand content and right-hand content, some pages you're going to want left-hand content and the main content that hide the right content. Some pages you're going to want to show both the left and the right as well as the main content. Some you might only want to show the main content and right. Some you might only want to show the main content and not the left and right. So what we can do there is add in to check to see if we have anything assigned to the left module position and the right module position. If we do, then we'll make the width of the main content area 50% of the page. If we only have one of them set, so if we only have the left set or the right set, like it's something assigned in either the left module position or the right module position, we'll make the width of the main content area 75%, and we will make the left-hand module or right-hand module the additional 25%. Or if we've got none of the left or the right modules assigned, we'll just leave it at 100% width forward. So these classes here, I've just loaded that up into class field of the div that I'm wrapping the main content in, and then I'm styling it with CSS. Now, I haven't really looked at the CSS file yet, so we'll just have a quick look at that. I've added in some comments here to help you sort of understand what the CSS does, but you can see here we've got the header, it's full width of the page. We're making sure that the logo aligns to the left of the page. We're adding a little padding to the logo so it's not right up against the edge of the page. We've got our menu that's floating to the right hand side of the page, and a bit of padding around the menu too to make it not go right close to the edge of the page, and also so the menu items are padded between each other. This slip nav, that's to do with the mobile menu. I haven't actually shown you the mobile menu yet, but you can see here display none, so when we're looking at the desktop version of the site we want to hide the mobile menu. Let's have a look at that now. So we've got the desktop menu at the top here. As soon as we shrink the page down, you'll see that the mobile menu appears. And that's all done using that slipnav JavaScript file. Rather than hand coding this yourself, it's just so much easier to use a third-party script like that. So it just creates the same menu, but this mobile version is hidden when we're on the desktop version. And we've got a media query at the bottom here that when we get to mobile screens, so it's like iPhone sort of portrait size, then we're going to hide our normal menu and we're going to show our mobile menu. So anyway, so let's do the menu. We don't want bullet points on the menu, and setting the colours of the menu. The hover colour, you'll notice that when we hover over the menu it changes to a slightly lighter colour, so that's just the hover action there. And we're setting a minimum width so that the menu items aren't right up against each other. So that's the sort of header section. We've got the main content area. We're putting a bit of padding on the content and making it the content top area module position is going to be forward to the screen, same with the content bottom, it's going to be forward. Then we've got the footer position where we're going to add in colour of the font. We're going to make sure that it's aligned to the bottom of the page, put a bit of padding around that text and centre it. Then we've got the banner position. So the banner position, we want that hard up against the header. We don't want any space between the header and the banner. So we're getting rid of all the margins and paddings there. Then we've got the content area. So our left-hand modules, we're making that 25% width. The width of the main content area when the left and right modules are both visible would be 50%. We've got the width of 75% when only one of those left or right modules is appearing. Our message queue, we want it to take the whole width of the screen. And yeah, then we've just got the media query. On a decent template, you'd have multiple media queries in here to target different devices. So at the moment, we're just targeting like an iPhone portrait mode, but you'd probably want media queries to target the iPhone landscape mode, some media queries to target an iPad when it's in portrait mode, iPad in landscape mode, and any other mobile devices that you're targeting. So you can have slightly different CSS code for those devices or those screen sizes. So as I mentioned before, we're hiding the main menu on mobile and displaying the slip-down menu. And also the left and right module positions, when we shrink down the page, we want them to take up the full width, and instead of floating next to each other, they're going to just drop down and appear one on top of the other. So that's what the code there is. Okay, so that's really all we've changed in the template. Now it's time to install that new template, so we can install that over the top. Okay, let's go and have a look at the template now. You'll see that nothing's changed here in the parameters. It's still kept all those settings we had before. Because we use that method equals upgrade, it's just updating the files and not deleting anything there. You'll notice in the template styles here, I've got the preview image because I added that preview PNG file in there. You've got the template name, and you've got the date it was created, the version, the author details, all this sort of stuff you can see in the back in there. So if we have a look at our site now, Not a lot's changed at the top here. If we look down the bottom, you can see our footer looks much nicer now because we're centering the text, we're adding the padding, and we're making it fixed to the bottom of the page, so it just makes it look a bit nicer. Next thing we want to do is add in our banner across the top. So what we can do, we can go to modules, create a new module, custom HTML, and call this banner. We only want it to appear on the home page, and we want to assign it to the banner position and insert an image. Here's one that I prepared earlier. Load that. Insert. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the source code, and we're going to make the width of this image 100%. So it goes right to the edge of the page. Save that. And now when we refresh our page, there's our banner across the top there, and you'll see it stays at the full width of the page when you shrink it down as well. Next thing we'll do is add in our left and right content. So let's go back to the back end. We'll create another module, custom HTML. We'll call this left side. Assign it to our module position. Take left, and let's chuck in an image in here. Just whack it for a while. We only want that to appear on our home page, so let's select home. And let's have a look at the side now. So we've got the left-hand area, we've got the main content area, and you'll notice that when we shrink it down, it does overlap a bit here, and that's where you have those extra media queries to fix that up for different size devices. But when you get to a certain point, the main content area just drops down below the left-hand content area. You can assign multiple modules into those multiple positions. So let's add in a login module. We only want it on the home page, and we will assign that to our left position. Okay, so now we've got our login module and our other module. You'll notice the styling of this looks pretty terrible. That's one thing to be aware of when you're creating a custom template. You have to style everything. So any of these standard Joomla modules that you're using, you need to add your own styles to define the fonts and the input fields and the padding and how the buttons look and all that sort of stuff. Same with third-party extensions. You may need to style some of those as well. If you want to change the position of modules, obviously you can just look at that module position, go to the ordering, and swap them around. So although they're both assigned to the same position, because of this ordering, that defines where they appear in the site. So now we'll see our login modules appearing above our other module. If we go to our About Us page, because there's no left-hand modules, you can see the main content here is taking up the full screen. So then maybe we want to add in our right-hand module. So let's do that. We'll create custom HTML. Call this side. Double show the title and assign it to content right. Save that. And there we go, there's our content on the right. So that's pretty much the basics of building a template and how it all works. One thing I would do if I was to use this template on a site, I'd probably add in some code for the drop-down menu, because at the moment if you try to create a sub-menu, I'll show you what happens. So you can see we've got the sub-menu there. If we refresh, because we haven't styled our sub-menus, they're just appearing there pretty terribly. What I would do, I'd add some CSS to hide the sub-menu, and when you roll over the main menu there, then it will pop up with the sub-menu. I can show you quickly on the site we've done that on recently. Here's one where we've got the menu at the top, and when you roll over you can see that the sub-menu that pops up. That's all that's done with CSS code. There's no JavaScript required for it, just CSS to make all that happen. Besides that, you should have a basic idea now of how to build a template, and also if you needed to go in and edit an existing template, you can do that too. One thing I covered in the user rep tonight as well, that I haven't talked about, is template overrides. So if we go to our template and go to templates, select our template, you can create overrides in the usual way. You come in here, and let's say we want to override the login module, we can create a module. What that does is it creates this HTML folder within your template, and within that you've got the override files that you can modify. And obviously you can make your changes in there, and when those modules update, because you've overridden it, it's going to use this version rather than the other version, and you're not going to lose your customizations. So one little demo that we did today was move the password field to be above the username. So if you wanted to do that, we just need to find the code here for the password, and that, find the code for the username, and just paste it above that. Save that. And then we do this, and see this password and above the username. So that's just a simple template override. Also, if you want to edit your CSS and stuff, you can do all that through here as well. You can go to CSS, find a template file, and add in some custom code here. So, for instance, if you wanted to style this, maybe you want to change the colour of the login button, you can add in some CSS in here. Green text. So you can style that however, obviously that doesn't obviously do something that looks good, but we can then take the CSS and in our template file, I'll just chuck it above the media query, and maybe instead of green, I'll make the colour red. And now we'll refresh. You can see there it's styled the button. And if we look at that, you can see it's loading up the CSS from our template CSS file there. So, hopefully this has been a good introduction on building a basic template. Good luck. If you're looking for these slides, you can go to slideshare.net/tip/creating your own Joomla templates April 2019, or if you just go to slideshare.net/tip, you can see all the presentations I've done recently, and that's the most recent one I've seen. So yeah, that's about it. Once again, apologies for the audio of the Joomla user group tonight, but hopefully this makes up for it. And one last shameless plug for the Joomla Day Australia in Brisbane. Buy your tickets, it's on the 3rd and 4th of August. And it's going to be a great event, so hope to see you there. Thank you very much.